take notice of is there's two columns in every budget. One is the over budget dollars, which you can see right there is at $7.2 billion. The other is what's called DME money, and that stands for Development, Modernization, Enhancement. And essentially, that's the new money that's floating into programs. And that's what you want to keep an eye out too. And when I'm reading the budget, I typically will look at two key things. I'm looking at where there's new pockets of DME. I'm also looking at consistent investments for contracts that meet the size that the government would risk allowing my company to go bid. So those are very important things, and I can expand on that a little bit later. So here's what your assignment, if you choose to take it, this is what I would ask you to do. Make a short list of what your firm does, whether that's systems engineering and technical assistance, mobile development, surveys, whatever you do. Get a piece of paper, go through your website, look at what your company does, compare that also with what the government is saying that they do. Using the control and find feature, we're going to match what your firm does to budget line items. And then we're going to be looking at where the DME is versus the steady state money. Ultimately, I don't have time to go through this today because I want to get to your questions, but when I teach budget courses around the country, it's generally a 2-hour session, and ultimately you want to be able to tie in the Exhibit 300, points of contract, and announced deals that you pull from e-pipeline into this to kind of match, hey, this is where the spending is, this is where an RFP is coming, this is how it tracks back to a mission priority. And those are very important things to know when you go to begin calling on government. Now, up on your screen, this is a budget. Obviously, I'm on a Mac, so everything's Control F. I think it's Command F if you're on a PC. But you type in what your company does, and you will literally go to that spot. There is no substitute for reading. I think it's like 850 plus budget line items for HHS. But again, begin looking at what they're asking for, where it is, and just do that by your keyword search. And what that will tell your team is at the end of the day, if you report up the chain, they go, well, what's the outlay for HHS? You should be able to fundamentally say, let's just say you're a web infrastructure company, you should be able to say that HHS is investing this amount in web infrastructure. Of that, this is DME, and we've been able to identify this is what's coming out for procurement. You should be able to have that kind of sense of what's coming down the pipe for 2014. Now, in the back of this, and this is one of my favorite reads as well, is that the government, and we did a great series on this earlier this year where we talked about the verticalization of government. And government gives you an idea of how vertical their offering is. And as you're looking through the budget line items, I mean, it goes through A through X. There's a lot to read. But just like on this budget line item, look how they're segmenting this. Look what they're looking for here. That should give you some indicator, too, of, again, how to approach someone about what they're spending the money on. One of the areas that I want to track, this is also a great feature in ePipeline as well. You can do this directly. But so you get into a budget line item, you go through the exercise, and you're like, all right, man, I've got a handle on this. You're beginning to look at what companies are doing. A lot of things stem out of the federal procurement data systems, and you can literally go into that. You can do it through ePipeline as well, a lot easier. And you can look up where government dollars are going, to whom they're going with, when it expires. And it's a very easy thing to do. And one of the things that I typically do before I walk into an agency is, man, I know who my competitors are, where their contracts are expiring, and have a sense of what's going on from a procurement standpoint. We are going to move on, and we're going to shift gears quickly because I do want to get to your questions. But again, going through the budget, there's absolutely, it should be something that both your marketing, sales, and management does to have an understanding of what your customer needs. The next thing I would encourage you all to do is to look at the 300s or the business case of an agency. I've listed here on your screen kind of a shortcut to do this. You're going to go out to the IT dashboard. You're going to click on Portfolio and then click on Investments. You'll then go down to HHS, and you're going to pick a bureau. Now, you'll come into a screen. It'll give you a little bit of an overview, and you can see the big arrow there, and you're going to click on Current Exhibit 300. And I'm going to tell you in a moment, and I go into a little more detail this in my book about why this is so important, but to read an agency's business case. I'm going to let you all read this for yourself, but I have 8 things here listed on the side. I mean, this is great information. So can you imagine how this would change your first call into an agency or a senior person when you've done all this homework and you know what their challenges and issues are? There's so much involved in this. I encourage you just to spend some time reading through this. I'm happy to answer questions offline about how you leverage this into your marketing and sales forecast. These are very important documents. I want to take a pause before we get to each of your questions, and we've got